What's up, guys? Hotshotfrontier back at it again with another video. And in this video, guys, we're going to be discussing a budget tier list for September 2023 post Banlist. So you guys know the Banlist dropped not too long ago and it made a lot of big changes, of course, in terms of cash tier getting bumped down, which is really good because now we have somewhat a more healthier format, depending on who you ask, of course. But for this video, we have the tier list categories, and those are top budget, let him cook, could win locals, experienced pilot, and finally it's budget, but so let's go ahead and get into the first one, and that is Drytron. So this deck actually got a bump from the ban list in the form of Herald of Hornslight. I'm actually going to go ahead and put it at let him cook because, again, it's a new format and a lot of decks are competing for that top spot. And this deck, I think, has a good chance with the terms of playability it has in the deck. So I'm going to leave it there and let's see what happens with it. Moving on, we have Gold Pride Punk, and I actually would put this at top budget like I usually do, but I'm going to put this at let him cook in front of Drytron. Reason being is that this deck is a really fun combo deck to play and it's so cheap too. You guys should definitely go ahead and give it a try. But other than that, I mean, it just hasn't seen like that success that we want to see with the deck, no YCS wins, no YCS tops, unfortunately, recently. But I think, give it time because this deck is very consistent and it did not lose anything from the ban list. Honestly, it gained because it can actually make the Hot Red Calamity Dragon. But I mean, what do you guys think? Let me know down below, of course. And if I miss any of your decks, let me know down below and I'll put it in the next budget tier list. But moving on, let's go into Exo Sisters. And wow, this deck is actually top budget. So now that Kashtira, which was a very anti-graveyard deck, is gone, I feel like decks like Flunderies and Exo Sisters are kind of take up that spot. This deck can actually go ahead and still use D-Shifter, which is very important. And I think this is actually Exo Sisters' time to shine finally. So we're gonna put it at top budget. It's insanely cheap to build, and I think it's a very good competitor in this meta. So moving on with Geist, I'm actually gonna put Geist at experienced pilot. I want to put could win locals, which it definitely can, but I feel like it's better in the hands of someone who knows the ins and outs of the strategy and can really understand what it can do against the current meta. Now, it's not a bad deck in no regards, but it's just unfortunately one of the weaker trap decks we have out right now. Labyrinth is much better. Same thing with Trap Tricks, and they're more consistent with the combo lines. That's the sort of same thing that I think that Ultrageist is missing that consistency. But give it time, we'll see what happens with that strategy. Speaking of the devil, moving on to Labyrinth, and we're gonna put this at top budget. Definitely put that above Exo Sister, but this deck is absolutely crazy. It's the best trap-based deck we have out in the current meta. And I mean, the cards just got reprinted from the 2023 Megaton, so if you're looking to pick up the deck, definitely go ahead and grab the copies there because they're very cheap. The only cards that you can't pick up are the ones from Photon Hypernova. Welcome Labyrinth is about a $20 card, unfortunately, but honestly, it's not too bad considering everything that you can get with the deck. Now, you can play optional cards, but they will cost you more money. You can play Unchained, you can play it in the extra deck. The Link 2 is very good for the strategy, but again, that will run you a little more. Honestly, though, this deck is so good, and it's kind of going towards the best deck of the meta, but we'll see what happens as the format shapes itself. Next up is Salamangreats, and I'm actually going to put this at top budget. Now, every time I do a tier list video and Salamangreats are involved in it, I always say wow, this is one of the worst cyber strategies we have out right now. I'm glad to say finally this is one of the best cyber strategies we have out right now. Of course, other than Marine Cess, but this deck is so good. It's insanely cheap. The only card that's going to run you about 60 bucks for a playset is the Salamangreat of Fire that came out recently in the Volcano set. But other than that, everything else is really cheap. It's been reprinted multiple times. Of course, you can get a lot of the rare cards from the Volcano set. So if you're definitely looking to pick up this strategy, you can do it now. I mean, honestly, I think the Salamangreat of Fire is going to stay around that $20 price point because it did shoot up after the balance to $45, but of course it settled. But again, if people see success with this deck, cards will go up. So consider doing that if you're going to be picking up the deck. Our next deck could definitely be King of the Pirates, and yeah, Plunder Patrol, top budget. Now I'm actually put this at let him cook. The deck is insanely cheap. That's what it has going for it right now. But you can, of course, go ahead and put the Adventure Engine in, Visio cards, hand traps, do what you want with the deck. I just think that might be time for it to kind of see more support and kind of push the deck even further. But that's just in my opinion. Let me know down below what you guys think. Next, we have Tri-Brigade, and Tri-Brigade is budget, but I mean, this is pure, of course. it's just unfortunately we have stuff like Droll in the format, and even then, a long time ago, it's just wasn't. It's not a good deck right now. Unfortunately, it's insanely cheap, which is great, but I think that if you want to play it, Tri-Brigade with something, play it with Sprite. But then there's the argument that you could just play Sprite with anything else, really, you know. But I don't know. Maybe we'll see more support for this deck later on, and it'll hopefully give it a boost. Next up, we have Marine Cess, and Marine Cess is actually, of course, a top tier strategy. It's insanely budget, and it has specific hand traps for the current meta that it can play. Plus, the trap cards can negate monster effects, which is really nice too. And this deck does pretty good going first and second. So you really want to have a nice deck that's balanced that way. Moving on, we have Scareclaw, and initially, you know, I would put its budget, but you know, I'll give them a little more. I'll say like it could win locals, honestly. Scareclaw is not a bad deck, and a lot of people forget what it does, which is pretty bad on their part, but good for you if you are a Scareclaw player. Moving on, we have Trap Tricks, and Trap Tricks are a worse Labyrinth. Trap Tricks are not bad. I just think, of course, it goes like Labyrinth, Trap Tricks, then like something like Poltergeist, and you could play like Trap Tricks Lab, really, which is actually pretty interesting too. The new support for it is just insane. Like just off of 3 structure decks, you can have a pretty competitive deck in the current meta, which is kind of crazy. Next up, we have is the Red Dragon Archfiend support that came out, of course, pretty recently, and I'm gonna put that Let Them Cook. So reason being is that a lot of people are actually speculating that this might be the new Dragon Link deck, because you guys know Dragon Link got nerfed in the form of Magnitude to 1 and Chaos Space to 1, unfortunately. But wouldn't that be interesting though? Like a Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds Jack Atlas deck. Like it would be like a character deck, but now it's like a meta worthy deck. That'd be absolutely crazy. I can't wait to see builds for that. Moving on, we have Black Wings, and Black Wings are not only top of budget. I'm not gonna say like better than Labyrinth, but honestly, Black Wings are so versatile. Now, of course, if you guys have not seen my recent deck profile, definitely go ahead and do so. I'll leave a link down below for you guys to check it out. But wow, we can not only Calamity Lock your opponent, you can actually make a really strong board without the Calamity Lock. You can play 3 Assault Dragons on your field. They each burn for 700 for a monster effect that your opponent activates. That's 2100 per effect. That's kind of broken. And this deck also got reprints in the 2023 Megatins too. The deck was cheap before, and now it got reprints, and the reprints look even better in Prismatic. Like, what? You guys should definitely go ahead and check that deck out. You know, if you, of course, were Blackwing fans back in the day too, definitely go ahead and check that out. Next, we have Dinomorphia, and Dinomorphia could win locals. The only problem I have with Dinomorphia is that going second, it's much harder with the deck. Of course, with any trap-based deck, but also this deck likes to have your own life points, which, you know, kind of makes it hard, of course, at the time, but this deck is still good nonetheless. I don't think many people will disagree that Rescue Ace is actually a top budget strategy. Now I know hydrants are 40 bucks each, so of course 120, but other than that, like everything else is pretty cheap for the deck. The Cypress cards they play in the deck, the other Rescue Ace cards they play are insanely cheap for a deck that is potentially meta tier 1. You can't go wrong with that. I can see hydrants going to like 60 bucks a piece when this deck really goes insane. So, I mean, even got second place in a recent YCS. That's kind of crazy, right? So I wouldn't count that deck out by no regards. Moving on, we have Heroes, and Heroes could win locals. I mean, we haven't seen new support, of course, since the Monsters Revenge Battles Legend set, but this deck is still really good, and it's legacy support, so this deck will always be getting new support, and who knows, it might actually bump up the deck to even like top of budget or even other further tier list videos. Going on to Kashtira, that's a very interesting deck, huh? I can't even say it's top budget. I either want to put, wow, it's not that bad. I can't. I'll put Let Him Cook. I mean, we've seen a very aggressive Banlist, in the form of Kashtira Rise Heart ban, which is hallelujah, right? But a lot of people have been making like a very aggressive going second build of the deck, which, I mean, it kind of was the same before Rise Heart came out, if you know what I mean. So the deck isn't like dead, but it's just not at the tier 1 stats as it was before. Moving on, we have Dark World, and Dark World I actually put top of budget. So this deck is insanely cheap to make because you just need 3 structure decks, and of course some cards from Duelist Nexus and other sets like that. But other than that, you can make a very somewhat consistent hand loop with your opponent. plus a lot of interactions and less Bystials in the format, which will actually boost this deck's consistency. So that's pretty nice to see. Next we have Makonko, and I put Makonko as a top budget tier in my last budget video, and I'm actually going to put the same way because honestly this deck is very cheap. The Orihime is about, I believe, 15 bucks. The same thing with the equip spell it plays, and they're about the same price, which is nice, and it's getting new support in Age of Overlord, so definitely look forward to that. Moving on, we have Inferno Noble Knights, and Inferno Noble Knights, I'm going to say experienced pilot. So this deck has been seeing a little trouble recently since Duelist Nexus came out, unfortunately, but I think now that the playing field is sort of leveled out, this deck will see more playability for sure. Moving on, we have Sword Soul, and initially, I would put Sword Soul like experienced pilot, but I think now that again the meta is sort of leveled out, we can see Sword Soul winning locals definitely, right? I mean, it was just having a lot of trouble with a lot of hand traps. If it's versing like 2 to 3 hand traps, that's pretty much it for the deck. Unfortunately, I think you're forced to play cards like Crossout Designator to help you go through your combos, which is pretty necessary for a lot of the strategies out right now, of course. Moving on with Tier Limits, and really interesting to say because Tier Limits are definitely let him cook. Wow, how many times has Konami hit this deck, and this deck is actually going to the top tables out of YCS? Like, I can't even believe it. That's crazy. And in my opinion, I think it's actually even better than Cashier right now too. Like Cashier lost a lot in terms of Rise Heart, but Tier Limits have lost a lot too, but I think they're still a better deck. That's a hard take for me. What do you guys think down below? Moving on, we have Runic, and Runic is also top budget. A lot of top budget strategies here. I'm loving it. Not only did they not get banned off the ban list, they also got reprints in the 2023 Megatons. So I think a lot of people have been picking up the Sleipnir, the new card from Duelist Nexus, and they're cooking up something, but definitely is a top budget strategy. Moving on, we have Sky Striker, and it's budget, but it's having that issue in just terms of just playing right now. It's just so slow. It's not how it used to be. And wow, I never thought I would say it, but I'm feeling a little sorry for Sky Striker players. Next up, we have our Spirals, and Spirals are definitely a deck that can win locals currently. The deck has issues with, of course, Master Plan still being banned, but hey, my friend still cooked me regardless, all right? I might have to go ahead and ask him to see if he'll do a deck profile for me so I can show you guys his goo, because wow, it's crazy. Moving on, we have Flunderies, and that is a top strategy for sure. Now, this is all now like organized by like, what's best and what's not best, but Flu would kind of be like in between here. I mean, wow, the M-Pin actually doubled in price, if you guys didn't know. The secret rare went to like 14 bucks because this deck is crazy. It won a YCS. Finally, it's getting the recognition that a lot of people don't think it deserves, but I think it definitely deserves. So going into this format, it's already a strong contender, and I can't wait to see how it turns out towards the end of this format. But finally, for the last deck, we have Dinos, and Dinos, I think right now could win locals. The issue with Dinos is that we did not get Misk back to 3. Konami, why every time you hate me? But I mean, what can you do? I would love to see more support cards for the strategy, but let's see what they do in this new meta. But guys, that's it for the budget tier list for September 2023 after the ban list. Let me know your opinions down below. What do you guys think of this? And if you guys like the video, make sure you give it a huge like. Comment down below. How do you feel about our ban list? Did we miss any decks? Let me know, of course. And guys, if you're not subscribed to the channel, what are you doing? Make sure you go ahead and hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you're updated the moment I upload new videos. But guys, that's it for me. Hope you have a great rest of your day or night, and I'll catch you in the next video. Peace.